Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism. I'm Rivka.
And I'm fucking tired, Rivka. I'm Frank. I was just saying to Rivka, came off a very long work day, so might be a little bit low energy, although I feel like what we're about to talk about in this A block might get me fired up. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you did say, right, but you're like, actually, I'm fired up. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how much is pulled out of me. But yeah, we wanted to talk really quickly up top here before we get into our conversation about the Jeff Bezos biopic. Wanted to talk about the Grammys. Not all of the Grammys. We didn't watch them. I don't really know much of what happened, except that Chappell Roan won for, I think, Best New Artist and made a very stirring, quite critical acceptance speech.
I told myself if I ever won a Grammy and I got to stand up here in front of the most powerful people in music, I would demand that labels and the industry profiting millions of dollars off of artists would offer a livable wage and health care, especially to developing artists. Because I got signed so young. I got signed as a minor, and when I got dropped, I had 0 job experience under my belt, and like most people, I had a difficult time finding a job in the pandemic and could not afford health insurance. It was so devastating to feel so committed to my art and feel so betrayed by the system and so dehumanized to not have health. And if my label would have prioritized artist health, I could have been provided care by a company I was giving everything to. So, record labels need to treat their artists as valuable employees with a livable wage and health insurance and protection. Labels, we got you, but do you got us?
Yeah. I mean, beautiful. Always love to see when someone gets the stage and makes a stand and says something important, which Chappell hasn't been shy to, right? I think that, we agree.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, I completely agree. We love to see it, you know? It's funny, we were actually talking about this in a future episode coming soon, about how a lot of modern day musicians are just kind of cowards. And a lot of musicians from past eras have been much more engaged in, you know, social movements, politics, whatever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Chappell has been, I mean, from our understanding, we've talked about her on this podcast, she's been doing shit like this. And this is one of the biggest platforms. And, you know, it's a pretty, it's a fairly Marxist critique. You know, she's saying that these labels are profiting off of the hard work of hundreds, thousands of artists. And yeah, sitting high on the hog while a lot of younger artists, I mean, we've talked about, the music industry is just fucked. So it's just so difficult for an artist to make a living wage. Meanwhile, the record executives who produce no music get to have health insurance plus, you know, massive incomes, and they don't make anything.
Yeah, we'll see where, you know, I guess my pause is just thinking about like how when these statements are made, and I'm sure I don't know much about the music industry, but just also like a broader, this is also like, it's not the music. This is a calling for why we need Medicare for all. This is why we need healthcare for everyone. Because also beyond this, it's like, why should my healthcare be dependent on my fucking job?
That's regardless. A very good point. Yeah.
Which is kind of just beyond that, where I'm like, yeah, the whole system is dehumanizing, you know, the idea of like labels, we got you, but do you got us? It's like, unfortunately, under the system of capitalism, like they're not incentivized to ever get you. You know,
yeah.
A bigger, broader critique of just kind of like, oh, right, like the call isn't even like the capitalists to have to have a heart for their artists and humanize them. It's like, that's just not the incentive under this system. We do have to inevitably change the system.
That's very, very good points, Riv. Yeah, this should not be the responsibility of massive corporations like record labels to provide the basic to meet people's basic human needs.
I mean, not even that it should be. I mean, yeah, they should fucking be responsible, but like just that awakening of like, yeah, but they never will be, because capitalism does not. That's not how it works. They can't grow in the if there's competition, like, you know, if they're going to be progressing the way capitalism requires they progress by giving out health insurance. It's not their profit model to humanize their artists. Like, that's why it's happening, right? Like, they're not the ones to be pleading to. It's actually a bigger system.
Yeah, the only way benefits concessions like that are through some sort of like organized struggle, whether that's like a unionization effort or otherwise. And you know, there's always been like little talks of like, how do we unionize musicians or like musical artists? It'd be a huge undertaking. I don't know. I'm actually interested if anyone's ever actually tried, but
I'm sure there's music collective. I'm sure we know there's alternative labels, where the musicians own the means of production in that regard, you know?
Yes. And I know that there are like music platforms, like streaming platforms that are trying to do the same thing. But I mean, just by nature of, you know, how being a musical artist works, you don't have like a common workplace, so to speak. So it's just like a huge organizing undertaking.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely.
I mean, I guess it just goes to like a broader thing that I've been thinking about, like just the exhaustion of the liberal bourgeoisie mentality, which is kind of like, I think, a good place to be, of like just the pure, and what I mean by that is like the pure exhaustion of like, wait, I don't understand. We gain a certain amount by begging the corporate overlords to be more humane and to maybe give us better health care, and maybe like, and getting just exhausted by that. Like, we can do humane capitalism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we can do humanely, and just like, oh wait, at least in like the early progression of like the reading of Marx I've done, just like in the early stages of understanding this, that feels like it's like the basic premises. It's hard to give up on that, you know? I mean, that's the capitalist realism of it, like where it's so hard to imagine a world without capitalism. You're just like, maybe my optimism should be just like, let's hope that the labels can change. Let's hope that the studio system can change. You know, let's hope that we can just get them to care about us, you know?
No, it's against their own interests. It is.
Yeah, like they would be bad at their job.
Yeah, exactly. The shareholders would be upset.
Yeah, and they would ultimately lose out to a bigger beast. Like, that's the fucking point. So so that's just kind of the thing of like, it has to start to be the other way, and hoping, you know, I hope Chapel's on their way to also like finding some like ideology, some comrades to ground all of this amazing awakening in, beyond like, okay, please do better for the little ones, but I'm going to keep working with, you know, ultimately they're still working with their record labels, right? Like, they're not
Totally.
you know what it is, like, okay,
we got to get her on the pod. If anyone has a line
please, that would
to
be
pop
so
superstar
fucking...
Chapel Rowan, please email us moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com. Last thing I'll say about,
I think you said the exact same thing the last time we talked about them.
I'm going to do this every time until someone hears that and is like, you know what? I went to college with Chapel. I never bother her, but Rivka and Frank are awesome. So I'm going to help you out. Last thing really quickly on the music industry. This just made me thought of a fun anecdote from my time in LA. I was once working for someone who was in the entertainment industry on like the film, TV, comedy side of things. And we were at a record label event. And at one point, you know, we're just kind of like standing off to the side on ourselves. We're not really talking to any of the music people. And at one point, the guy I was working for leaned over and said, you know, our side of the business is pretty fucking awful, but these people are fucking monsters. And it just was like, oh, damn. Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean,
and if you've listened to this pod long enough, you can infer based on that impression who Frank's talking about.
I did not name any names whatsoever. I mean, yeah, that was just a fun anecdote from the bowels of Hollywood. But they're all exploitative enterprises I don't know if you can quantify whether one is more evil than the other, but that's not what we're going to do today.
You can't. They both are incentivized by the same system.
Yep.
They're battling to be the most evil.
They absolutely are. Okay, we have to get to this conversation.
Yeah,
Very excited.
You're gonna want to hear this.
Very excited to share it with you all. Just a little context. You know, we know that probably no one has seen this movie unless it's for free to watch on Roku. So if you want to pause it here and go watch the movie and then come back, you can do that, or you can just listen to us talk about it. It's not like spoilable. This movie is basically like if you know the cult bad movie The Room, it has kind of The Room vibes to it. It is a very, as you'll hear us say, poorly made movie with a lot of unintentional comedy in it.
But I have a feeling after you hear this conversation, you're going to want to see this movie.
You might want to watch it first so that we don't spoil some of the more ridiculous moments for you. But yeah, do
you.
You do you. Different strokes, different folks. But that's basically why we're talking about this movie. But first, real fast, before we get to that conversation, we just want to remind you, our audience, that we don't sell ads on this show. We rely on you, our community, to support us and keep the show going. So if you would like to do that, you can subscribe to our Patreon.
That's right. For just $5 a month, you get access to new bonus episodes and our entire back catalog, which has gotten some pretty cool stuff in there. Our Patreon link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com. Also, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player so you don't miss any new episodes.
Also, because we don't sell ads, we in fact donate our ad space. So if you are part of a leftist or progressive organization and you want to run an ad on this show for free, email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back with our conversation about Bezos the Beginning with Sean Morrow.
Hey everyone, it's Frank here. So after the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, Rivka and I just wanted to take a moment in this mid-roll spot to direct you to some online resources if you would like to contribute to the relief effort. Honestly, there are so many different organizations doing incredible grassroots organizing on the ground. It would be impossible to name all of them, but the Mutual Aid Los Angeles network has done an incredible job of putting together a massive list of all of the different places where you can help out. And you can find that list by going to mutualaidla.org. That's mutualaidla.org. They have a bunch of different opportunities from donating to volunteering. If you're able to help out in any way, this is going to be a long recovery for the people affected by these fires in LA. All right, everyone, stay safe. And now back to the show.
Our guest today is Sean Morrow. Sean is the senior writer for the classroom team at the nonprofit newsroom More Perfect Union, working on video essays and short documentaries exploring corporate greed and the policies that enable them. Welcome, Sean, to Movies versus Capitalism.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sean, I am personally stoked that you're here. I have been a huge fan of More Perfect Union since its inception, and your work as it has come along, as it has come across the transom of the internet into our eyes and ears. I'm sure listeners to this podcast will be familiar with More Perfect Union. But I would love to hear from you. I don't know how you got involved in this work, how you got linked up at More Perfect Union, and what it is that you're focusing on over there.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, you and I have had a little parasocial relationship on on social media for a while.
Just sending little likes, little comments here and there,
knowing of each other for years. Yeah. So I've been in the kind of like social media video space for years. I was working at Now This back in 2014 when they first started, and at the beginning, Now This did have these opportunities to do legitimate progressive journalism and legitimate progressive news. As it grew, obviously that became more difficult. It turned into more of a corporate thing. But, there was a time when they were, letting us do, I was there from in 2014 again. So we were criticizing Obama from the left, and we were having these opportunities with a large platform to do this, which is kind of rare. And then, of course, during the 2016 election, it becomes what a lot of the center left media became, which is just like Orange Man bad kind of stuff. But that was still fun at the time. That was like, it still had it had a grasp there at the time. So I was there for a while, just making these short little videos about politics. Then one of my colleagues, Nico Pitney, he's like an old time, like digital media guy from Think Progress. I think he was the first person to ever, from a digital outlet, to ever ask a question in the White House press conference room. Went over to More Perfect Union to start it with Faz Shakir, who's an older Bernie guy, Washington guy. You might have seen on the news announced today that he's running for DNC chair.
DNC, yeah.
Yeah, so that should be exciting. So the two of them started this, and Nico reached out to me and was like, hey, we have this role on this team where we're trying to kind of like pull YouTube left a little bit, right? To try to combat PragerU. So this was years before the quote unquote Joe Rogan of the left conversation. And it was never said Joe Rogan. It was always framed as, trying to take down PragerU a little bit. So if someone Googles like, what is universal healthcare? Hopefully they'll get one of our videos instead of a PragerU video type thing. And it's just kind of evolved from there.
Yes, we will link to some of your videos in the episode description so folks can check it out, and More Perfect Union writ large.
Amazing.
Because again, it's a really wonderful organization. I have applied to work there several times, still haven't heard back. So
that's why we had you on, actually, Sean.
Yeah,
to bring you on. Yeah. We're lean. We're going lean right now. But if there's an opening, I'll make sure to make sure your resume gets some extra attention.
Yeah,
but it's true. There's such great videos. It's such great content. And I didn't realize that was sort of like the Genesis project, but it really has done that. And I truly hope, when Googling what is universal healthcare, that now More Perfect Union comes up and not Prager fucking you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. I think like it sounds so silly and cynical, but there are these kinds of SEO wins that you can get, Mm-hmm. So hopefully now if somebody search it, like it's impossible to win for somebody searching, say, Elon Musk, but you can get to a point where you're winning for somebody searching BlackRock. You can get to a point where you win where somebody searches Cargill or the Resnick family, and they're seeing our content first before they're seeing even the official pages. And that kind of helps people get an understanding of what these corporations are doing to them and their families. Mm-hmm. A little bit. So people make these associations and it changes how they behave in their daily lives.
Absolutely. And it's such important work, especially considering that outlets like PragerU just get absolutely flooded with right-wing billionaire and corporate cash. They just have such a massive operating budget that it's just like the volume is so difficult to compete with, but like the quality of what y'all are doing over there is top notch. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, it's been a fun time. I always feel, I have friends that work in more corporate media that'll say like, oh, I feel like I can't talk about my job in front of you because like I'm on, like doing the bad things, the bad guy. But I'm like, no, I got lucky. I consider it a privilege that I have one of the few full-time jobs in media working for the good guys. It's luck. It's privilege. Like, and I feel, I think that everyone in our industry should be grateful for that, to be able to make a living doing the good thing. So yeah.
Dude, I completely agree. And I also have those conversations with friends now who are like, Rivka and I went to theater school together. That's how we met. Yeah. But now, we've been out of school for, Jesus Christ, how long have we been out of school?
Just skip that part.
Doesn't matter. But like a lot of our friends are getting have like transitioned out of, acting full time into more like corporate jobs, and have those conversations all the time of just like, do you hate me because I do this thing? And I'm like, no, as long as you're not doing anything like overtly evil or predatory or damaging, like, you know what the line is. And like, we all got to eat, there is no ethical consumption, yada, yada. So
yeah. And I mean, when you talk about like doing something grossly evil too, there is a question of scale where it's like, I have a friend who works in the art gallery business, and she would sell art to, very high-end people, selling to billionaires. She'd be like, I went into their home, and she would talk to me about feeling guilty about it. And I said, not to like denigrate the level of your job, but on their level of wealth, what you're doing is the same as like a caterer, like a cater waiter at one of their parties. You know what I mean? Like, you're not helping them. It's fine. Keep doing what you're doing. We need to make money. Like, it's not like you're, running the social media for Northrop Grumman or something like that, which again, like that's the kind of job, like maybe take a second, don't take that. But yeah.
I actually did find out recently that a mutual person connected to my family does in fact work for Northrop Grumman.
Wow.
And That was I drew the line there, but we don't need to.
We don't need to get to that because we have a very important film to discuss.
Yes.
Speaking
Sean,
of making money.
Yeah, speaking of making money, Sean, you brought to our attention a very important movie that I had no fucking idea existed. I don't know that Frank did either. And yet, it is, I believe, definitely the first biopic about our man, Jeff. And I say Bezos. Are you Bezos or Bezos? I say Bezos.
I say Bezos, but I've never been corrected one way or the other.
Yeah, they say Bezos in the movie. I've actually, now that I think about it, I've never heard him say it. Yeah.
In the movie, they say Bezos, but then sometimes people will come out with a Bezos. Mm-hmm. So I'm just... So yes, we are talking about Bezos, the beginning.
I wouldn't put it past the directors of this film to not check what was accurate, so who knows? But yeah.
This film came out in 2023. It was directed by Koa Lei, written by Allison Burnett, Tashana Ebanks, and R.V. Romero. It stars Armando Gutierrez, who also produced, as Jeff Bezos, Emilio Estefan as his father, Kevin Sorbo, that's right, Hercules, as Leonard Riggio, the CEO of Barnes & Noble, and Alex Mitchell as Mackenzie Bezos. I could not, and I know you tried too, Frank, I could not for the life of me find out how much this movie was made for.
No, there's very, very, very little production information about this movie. This movie doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I was actually looking for that today because I was trying to find out, like, did Jeff Bezos put any money towards this or anything? It's very strange it doesn't have a Wikipedia page, like every movie does.
No, in interviews with the producer star, Armando, no mention of whether the Bezos estate had any hands in this movie, but
I'm assuming if they did, that would be something that this company would be very excited about and want to share. Mm-hmm. So my assumption's going to be...
Although, I don't know. Maybe they saw the final product and they were like, you guys go ahead, you do your thing with this one.
And also, there was, we'll get more into it, but there was like some weird trivia on the IMDb page suggesting the writers did not fully get paid. There was like a lot of... I'm going to guess there was not much money. That's what I would, if I was to bet, bet there's not much money put into the making of this movie.
Yeah, that reminds me that we can, maybe this is more towards the end, but on the letterbox, there's somebody that talked from the production team that's like, we all got, like, it was one of the, I forgot about this actually, from when I didn't re-look this up. It was like one of the worst production experiences I've ever had.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, maybe we can read that later. Yeah,
I saw that as well. So of all the random stuff, I'm going to guess not a lot was put into it. And it didn't really make that much either. It grossed around 18,400 worldwide. So,
That's tough.
Yeah.
But it is, it's it's his whole origin story. They're trying to do the social network thing. You can really tell they're trying to do the social network thing, especially with his like fights with his friends and stuff. But except I think this director, my understanding is that he is very pro-entrepreneur, pro-corporate type of guy. Because his other movies, Mickey, I believe Walt Before Mickey, which I have not seen.
Yep.
And he's an entrepreneur too. Yeah.
Yes. In fact, on his IMDb bio page, it's like director entrepreneur, making sure things get done. It was very... It made sense. So in case we're going to ask you, Sean, next why you picked this movie. So, but for our listeners, in case you don't want to watch it, which is totally fair, but you
totally understandable.
You're like,
although it is a very fun watch.
Yeah. But if that's not your thing, which totally fair, and you're like, I just want to listen to you all tell me about it so I don't have to ever watch it. This film is based on, as Frank pointed out to me, not like a book, but children's books are books. I don't want to say that, but both of our sort of
not
understanding
a full biography
would be that it was a full biography. No, this is a children's book, Zero to Hero.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's very funny.
Oh yeah,
by Tashana Ebanks, who I guess has some credit in the writing of the script. This wild straight-to-streaming biopic tells the villain origin story of Jeffrey Bezos, a, quote, humble yet awkward entrepreneur on his mission to create Amazon, the the world's largest e-commerce company.
Just some quick historical context before we jump into the conversation. As Riv mentioned, this movie came out just last year in 2023. Remember her? We are 3 years into the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a hot labor summer with the historic strikes from both SAG-AFTRA and the WGA in Hollywood. It was also the summer of Barbenheimer and the summer of OceanGate, when the submersible that charged passengers $250,000 each to participate in a voyage to the Titanic never returned after imploding under the sea. In July, Twitter became X, the everything site, thanks to Elon Musk. Also this year, George Santos, the freshman New York Republican most famous for lying about nearly every part of his backstory, was expelled from the House of Representatives after a blistering ethics report on his conduct. And in October, there was the Hamas attack on Israel, which incited the genocide against Gaza, which still continues to this day. All right, so Sean, I think it might be apparent to our listeners, you even pointed out to us that, typically we cover more like mainstream films, but when we reached out to you, you were like, what if we talked about this Jeff Bezos biopic? So why did you choose this movie to talk about on this podcast?
Yeah, so this is a film I've been trying to bring more attention to for a while. I actually watched it by myself for the first time. It was on Freevee, which I believe is owned by Amazon. It's where that honestly pretty good show Jury Duty was first launched. It's Amazon Prime's free ad-supported thing. And that's why I kind of thought Jeff Bezos paid for it, was because that was the only place you could find it. And I just put it on randomly, like, what is this? And I was going to watch it like in the background as I like cleaned my apartment. And I actually found myself transfixed and laughing out loud at how bad it was. And when I watch something good, I'm not necessarily laughing out loud. Like I love something like, I don't know, like BoJack Horseman. Right. When I watch BoJack Horseman, I sit by myself and go, oh yeah, that was, but I was laughing out loud at it. And, there's this thing of people watching bad movies intentionally, usually with a group, like watching like The Room or Fateful Findings or whatever those movies are that become these cult things. And I mean, obviously it doesn't have as many great moments as The Room in terms of being like bad funny, but I thought it should enter that pantheon of classic bad films to be watching and making fun of, but with this kind of hint of the absurdity of deifying, the way it tries to deify Jeff Bezos and still kind of fails. Like there's moments in it that I just find so funny, like when he's trying to decide what he wants his business to be, and it's just a montage of him writing in a pad, and he just writes, books, ? And then hard cut to him walking around in a library like he just found out about books. And I did finally get to watch it with some friends, and we can't stop going, our impression of Kevin Sorbo, who plays the villain of the film, the CEO of Barnes & Noble, going, I am Barnes & Noble. It's so funny.
So that was also a heavy laugh line for me watching at home by myself.
I totally sign on to your campaign to make this the next Room. And you know what? Like, I think it needs a little help. I don't think anyone talked about. There was such little press, as we said, on this movie. They had such few interviews. The ones that they did have were such creepy, like, business bro. Let's talk about the finance of the fit. Like, let's talk about the heroic Bezos character with like the guy who played him. It's so strange. So I don't know. I bet you could even get the filmmaker, like, they need this. Yeah,
I did. So I was tweeting about it when I first saw it, making fun of it. And I actually felt kind of bad because that main guy must have searched Bezos at the beginning because he favorited all the tweets.
Oh, shit.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, oh, he's just happy somebody's talking about it. Armando Gutierrez, the guy who plays Bezos, who, like, honestly, he's fine. Like, he wasn't the worst part of the movie. I'm sure he could do other stuff pretty well too. He did his best with the script and everything. So yeah, I think I think it really could be that. But I do think it was a movie that they thought they were making The Social Network. But I feel like this director watched The Social Network and was like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg's fucking sick,
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, in The Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg is kind of sick.
That's true.
Eisenberg's performance and the way that the script is written, he's like rattling off these like fucking zingers. He's cutting everybody down. He's the smartest guy in the room. We know that that is not the real Zuckerberg.
Yeah, he's definitely way cooler than that. He's just kind of a bad guy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. This was wild. This was one of like this is one of the most insane pieces of like legacy washing propaganda I have ever seen, with potentially not even the sign off from its subject, Jeff Bezos. We couldn't find, like we said, we couldn't find any information whether he had any idea that this movie was getting produced, had any input on it. But clearly the filmmakers love him. Like, they're in love with him, and they're reinforcing this American myth of just like the single hardworking individual with one brilliant idea. And if they just sacrifice and treat their wife like shit as long as possible, they will become the richest man on the planet at some point. Yeah, but you're right, Sean. They also kind of fail at that in moments where you're like, he's being a fucking asshole. Like, this is he's a terrible person.
They deeply fail. That's what I thought was fascinating, like, as well. I was just like, how actually probably accurate this performance was, and probably how actually accurate this biopic is, in the sense that it's so fucking lame.
Yes,
it's so lame.
Yeah.
It's so lazy. It's so clearly like you just were the capitalist gods. Like, you just like got on that capitalist train at the right time. It's pure luck and privilege, and like you just and it's so lazy, and just like, like they couldn't even make him. The film, in one of we may have probably watched the same interview, because I think there was only a few, but Gutierrez described his goal in like making this was to fire up entrepreneurs, and like, if this movie doesn't get you to want to start a business, nothing else will. And I gotta tell you, even with all the anti-capitalism, I'm one who's susceptible to the entrepreneurial propaganda. Like, I like a startup, I like a business. This was like the opposite of that, which is great.
This seems miserable, yeah.
This
like,
seems
for example,
miserable.
Absolutely miserable, yeah. And I think there's stuff in it that they truly thought was sounding good that doesn't sound good, that is about how it is a myth. For example, there's a moment where Jeff Bezos is looking for a house with Mackenzie, and he says, like, well, we need something with a garage, because Apple and one other company, I forget which, were both started in garages. And it's so clear. It's like, oh, so you just wanted to manufacture that feeling, right? You wanted to fake that, but I think they think of that as like gumption, and not like him having this big amount of money from his parents, his rich parents, and starting from scratch, you know?
Even the scene when he goes to his parents, even the way they portray the idea coming to him, it's so honestly lame, where it's not like you said, he's not trying, no part of this character shows us that he has any intellect or like ability to like think or have ideas come. He scans people. He sees, he's like puts together, after like way too much time, that his girlfriend is a writer. He's like staring at her Princeton. And then that's when he's like, oh, Princeton books.
Yeah.
And like books. And I'm like, I bet that's fucking how it happened. Because again, this myth that he did anything other than have an idea that inevitably somebody was going to have. And then when he's like putting together that like, this is how much the internet is growing. And it's one fact. It's like one fact that he keeps sort of like looking at.
I took a note of that too.
2,300% growth.
Yeah, the internet's growing at 23,000% a year. What do you mean? Like retail on the internet? The internet? What does that mean? But they say that like several times. Yeah, I also wrote that down. Yeah, they also say several times that he's the youngest VP in the history of D.E. Shaw. They just keep saying that.
Yes. They do lay the groundwork very heavily that he is the hardest worker you have ever met in your life. When we meet him, his coworker Nico was like, "Is that a sleeping bag in your office?" And what else does he say?
He says, like, and then he says, no, the first line is he goes, I had to write it down because it's like, this dialogue's great. How are you always late? 'Cause I'm always working. Is this a sleeping bag? No. And it was kind of delivered like that too.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. Like, yeah, he's like, he just wants to be like, he's always working. Yeah, it's so phony.
Nor do you ever see him actually sleep in that sleeping bag, which, like you said, you're like, the sleeping bag, the garage, they kind of make it clear that this is all fucking bullshit.
Yeah, like he doesn't want to spend any money on his people. He's like, we don't have desks. We need desks, man. And just how difficult he is to deal with as well. He's not a personable person. And again, it's like, I don't think they meant to do it that way. You know, there's the kind of argument towards the end where it's like he's kind of a bad person and it gets kind of dark and they think they're doing the social network thing. But I think the point there is that it was all worth it, you know? And he has these people telling him he's an idiot the whole time for trying to do this. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think that happened.
I'm curious. I'm very curious about that, like that aspect of the beginning of Amazon. Specifically, I think his name is Shel Kafan, one of the original programmers portrayed in the movie by the tall guy who was actually like 20 years older than Jeff Bezos at the time when he started Amazon. But he was only at the company for, I think, 4 years. And then bounced. So I don't know. I got to imagine that there was some kind of falling out, or that there must be some ring of truth to that, because like right off the bat, when Jeff starts up first Cadabra.com with Shel and Paul, almost immediately the movie is like Shel and Paul are doing all of the work.
Yep,
they are doing they are doing like 95% of the labor. All Jeff is doing is bothering people for money. So like in like the truest capitalist sense, all he is doing is amassing capital. And these two guys are doing all of the programming, all of the coding, building the entire platform, figuring out the book distribution, figuring out everything. And Jeff's over here being like, I am the founder, I'm getting all the money together. And it's just like, if you like watching it for a second, it just completely dispels this myth that the capitalist, the owner of the company, of the corporation, the enterprise, is the one that's actually like taking the idea over the finish line.
Yeah, it's very true. And, you know, if you look at, say, the Elon Musk story, like he in early times was like, yeah, I can, when he was like, I think building the original X.com, which is like a financial firm, the one that like merged with like Peter Thiel's company to become PayPal. He's like, yeah, I can get guys on the phone and, you know, in an hour, I'll have $500,000. And he mostly brags about his wealth growing abilities, his ability to get investors. And then, you know, and then that's where like the whole myth of Elon Musk is all based on, his I'm awesome thing. And that's where all of his wealth is coming from. And then, you know, it's the very similar for Jeff Bezos. It's just like, they're very good at noticing other people's ideas and collecting money.
Yeah, and like not even that good at it. Just like did it first. Like it's like, oh, I mean, this is why as we're having this conversation more, I see where you're coming from, Sean. Everyone needs to see this, because the problem is, when these movies are made really, really well, like The Social Network, you know, we covered that, but it's arguably like it's a well made, and the problem is you like have issues with, same with the Apple movie. You're just like, it's hard to like tear away from the propaganda of it. It serves it so well, and this serves our purposes so well because it's so truthful.
It really is so truthful by accident. Like I really do. I don't know if you guys found interviews with the director, if he was intending this to look completely positive, but I mean, from everything I've read, it seems like he was, and it doesn't come off that way. Like I think it's a very good attack on the founder myth and the myth of this genius founder building something out of nothing or giving back. Because, you know, I think the way he attacks who are then almost partners as employees, is the same as he would one day go on to harm the drivers and everybody and all of,
absolutely.
You know, like the saying, oh, you can't have a desk is the same as saying, oh, you have to piss in a bottle. Obviously, it's not the same, but it comes from the same thinking, you know? And I'm sure all those gentlemen did very fine for themselves if they were in on this early ground, but yeah. And also he
articulates that exactly at the end when he says to Shel, which was probably the most demonic part, and you're like, how am I supposed to cheer for this guy after he says this? Do you have it written down, Frank?
That was the scene that I was like, is this a glorifying biopic, or are they like, do they think that this is a good scene? But you can explain it.
No, I think it's like you're like, we have to have this moment, and it's possible. So the deal is, of the very little we know, on the IMDb, which I think anybody can maybe put like a fact about a movie. I'm not sure how it works, but there's only two, and one of them says screenwriter Allison Burnett was never paid in full for the script. The producers are in material breach of his contract. They are also contractually obligated to join the WGA and refused. Surprise, surprise. The chain of title has been wrecked.
Wow.
Yeah, that seems pretty clearly written by those writers that were upset in a good way. Like, add more power to them. But
So it's possible that even Allison Burnett, because he's written some films that I haven't seen them, but like a Richard Gere movie, like has definitely credits as a writer, went to Juilliard as a playwright.
He's like the biggest person on this production, Allison Burnett.
So I wonder if if he had some different ideas and they just weren't even, they were so in the glorification of Bezos that like couldn't even see how this was so starkly anti the hero. Because he does say in this scene, he essentially turns to Shell and Shell's like, whoa, like realizing that this is going to take off, and it's kind of like, hey, we should be founders. I created the web. I literally made the website. That is the thing here. And Bezos turns to him and basically says, I know, but you should have asked and you should have known your worth. And now this will be a lesson to you forever. Like straight up evil ass shit.
There's fucking 3 of them in a room. And he's like, suck my dick. You are my employee. You get nothing. Like fucking Willy Wonka-ing at. He's like, you get nothing. You lose.
And I mean, played brilliantly. If like, I don't even know. I really don't think Gutierrez was meaning for it. But from the top, like the level of, it's hard to get that sort of like the tone of the voice is so lacks emotion through the whole film, like any emotion. So by the time we get there and this is said, it's just like he might as well be saying I love you to these guys. We just don't know. It's so insane. And it gave me chills because you're like, this is totally true. This is the guy who does everything we've been reading about to all of these people, who has destroyed our world and like has done this to all these workers. But it's also like, I feel that he, in the emptiness, he almost becomes the vessel for capitalism, which is what I also liked, is like, he's so personalityless. And that's the truth. If it wasn't him, it would have been someone else under this system. Like, that's what capital's all about. Like, this is such a pure good movie about how this shit works. It's just, especially the setup between him and Riggio from Barnes and Noble, where they just like, that scene was fucking brilliant too. In a library? They needed a fucking library? Like, wow.
Or was it a Barnes & Noble?
I think they had, I think
that was a library, yeah.
I felt like they had the meeting at a library, which was fucking twisted.
Which is like, even that, the first time he goes to a library and he wants to sell books, it's like saying like, oh, this public resource that's for everyone I want to destroy.
I wrote that down. Literally stealing from socialism, being like, oh, how does this work? Oh, people can come and get books for free and it's to serve the community. How do I completely take this and maximize profit for myself alone?
Sick.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I think that last scene where it's like, I do think there is a chance that this kind of entrepreneurial thing, he's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. He's basically saying like, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is actually said when he's talking about how they want to be as cheap as possible without sales tax to destroy all the competition.
Right. I wrote the line down. He said, monopolizing is a very harsh term. We prefer survival of the fittest.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, that sounds worse. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. And then, just going back to what you were saying about like how the script, that scene actually does feel effective, is like, perhaps the screenwriter, it's as it is with something like The Room, this producer, this director had this bucket of cash somehow, right? Just like Tommy Wiseau somehow had a bunch of money and was like, hey, do you want to write this script? And he's like, yeah, sure, I need money. I'm a legitimate screenwriter. And then he just did his best, and then they just fucked it up. Yeah. And I do think that last scene where he's saying, you're out, man, it like the Willy Wonka thing is also very clearly, I too think them trying to do The Social Network, like that classic scene where Andrew Garfield finds out he's out and Zuckerberg's like, tough shit. Andrew Garfield and Zuckerberg. No, what's that guy's name?
Eduardo Saverin. Yeah,
Eduardo Saverin and Zuckerberg. Yeah, Eduardo Saverin and Jesse Eisenberg. Yeah, Eduardo
Saverin, the richest person in South America, I found out recently.
Yeah, wow. Good for him.
Good for him. Yeah. Good for him. One last thing on that final scene between Bezos and Shell. It's unintentionally doing our work, meaning like us as critics of this film and critics of Bezos, for us, because there's only 2 options. Either one, they were saying like, oh, and this is where Jeff started to lose the plot and started to become an asshole, which was like right at the beginning to literally his first employee. Or which I think is more likely, the filmmakers were like, yo, we got to show how fucking cool and ruthless and such a good businessman that Jeff is. And we're going to show it in this scene with Shell where he tells Shell that he's not getting any founder's shares, and that'll show the audience that being a good businessman is so cool and tough and alpha and whatever. And it does the opposite. It does the complete opposite. It's like none of it seems okay or right or moral or ethical, and you're just like, I hate this man now. Like, he just Shell built the website.
No, totally, exactly. And like maybe they thought they were going for like a Breaking Bad thing, which in retrospect, obviously, like fuck Walter White, but like a Breaking Bad thing of like, this badass is gonna screw everyone over for his own win. You're supposed to root for him, and it's like, no, that doesn't work in real life. You don't root for that guy in real life. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
I think that is probably what they were going for, and it just did not work. I do want to watch this band's Disney film and see, what that is. If it's like the anti-Semite era and everything.
Well, that's the other thing I discovered about Armando Gutierrez, the producer and star of this film, is that he's made a bunch of like Disney ripoffs that are all based on he's made a Little Mermaid movie. He's making a Thumbelina movie right now. He's made maybe like a Beauty and the Beast. I'm not sure. I went through the list. There was like a bunch of them.
He also makes a lot for the Yankees, like a lot of shorts for the Yankees.
He also does something for the Yankees. I have to imagine the Yankees is where he actually makes his money, and then everything else is like where he's doing his hustle. But like clearly he's like, and he said in interviews, he's like, look, I'm a businessman. I'm a hustler. Like, that's why I get the Bezos mentality. Like, I have become him in this role. But just from looking at his IMDb, he's clearly like, all right, let's try to find this stuff, like these Disney IP pieces, but that are now like in the public domain because they're all based on like old ass fairy tales. And, kind of like someone will watch the knockoff Little Mermaid thinking that it's the real Little Mermaid, and not because they wanted to, but because like he's, it's I get what he's doing. I see the hustle, and I don't appreciate it. But like, Riv and I lived in LA. There are like, people think that LA is just, like the biggest writers, directors, filmmakers. There are a bajillion writers, directors, filmmakers all over, and they're all working, and they're all making movies. They're all like, can't tell you how many movies that I auditioned for where I'm like, this is one of the worst scripts I've ever read. I can't believe that someone has ponied up $5 million to make this. All right, cool. Oh, I didn't get the part. All right, whatever. They're all over the place. It's
things got to get made. There's on the lines of these like ripoffs, there's that again, thinking of classic bad movies, that production company, The Asylum, which if the year like Independence Day, the new ones came out, they were like, oh, we're gonna do a movie called like 4th of July about an alien invasion or whatever, and they're intended to trick you into accidentally watching them. I could believe they're called mockbusters, but it's just like there's all this kind of stuff's coming out all the time. People need to make money, and in the same way that like somebody can work at a diner or somebody can work at the best restaurant in the world, it's like people are always needing to make money, and that's why I'm not like I'm almost a little reluctant to completely shit on this, is because there's probably totally. DPs that are totally, they're like we're put their all into this, and
actors that and all the parts that are of it that work. I mean, again, the more we're talking about it, the more I'm actually a fan. I don't know, it sounds like this is the exact opposite intention of it, but I think it really does. I think this is worth seeing, and it would spark some great conversation if for those people who feel like, no, Jeff Bezos earned it, he's a hero. Be like, watch his biopic. Let's talk.
Yeah, and see the truth. And it's like, know that this is trying to be amazing. Kevin Sorbo does turn in. I feel like the entire budget went to hiring Kevin Sorbo, who I believe is like, he's not canceled, but he can only do conservative things now because the regular Hollywood hates him, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But
what did he do?
He was Hercules.
He's what?
Oh, why was he canceled, you mean?
No, yeah. No, I know he's hurt. Believe me. I'm a child of the 90s. I was homesick a lot.
Yeah, I think he's just a Trump guy. I don't think he did anything. I don't think he specifically like as a sexual harasser or anything. He's just a Trump guy who's anti-vax, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
he's like a James Woods type.
Let's talk about some of the choices for hair and makeup on this. I will say I was a big fan of the mustache they put on Kevin Sorbo.
So good.
So worked for me. It was, And, the wigs at first I'm like, what is going on? And I just felt like it added to, because I assumed they were going to like give us some, I didn't think, and again, brilliant, that the film ends where they get their first sale.
Yeah, the moment of the first sale.
It was the most diabolical laugh. That's what's just what I wrote. I was like, diabolical laugh from
so
Jeffrey
diabolical.
Bezos. And then it ends.
There's Leonard Riggio's real mustache, which
Oh, wow.
honestly, it's pretty good. They did a good job.
Yeah. They did a great job.
But yeah, that laugh was totally diabolical. You're so right.
And I assumed my just reading of the wigs was that like the wig is there because we're gonna do the Bezos transformation. We're gonna get like quote unquote hot Bezos at some point.
Well, yeah, it never even wraps back around to the prologue, which shows a Blue Origin jet taking off, a Blue Origin rocket taking off. They don't go back to that. No. They just end on that first sail. It seems like they had two different ideas that got muddled or something.
For Mackenzie, too, because I was like, that's clearly a wig. I thought they were going to do hot, because Mackenzie, they both get like clearly like hotter and use their money on themselves to get like transform and become hotter. I was like, this is going there. And I was kind of like, it's kind of like brilliant that it doesn't, because you're like, for our purposes, it's much more truthful and honest.
No, totally. Yeah. You were expecting almost, even not to make another Breaking Bad comparison, but like the moment he realizes he's getting male pattern baldness and was like, I only have one choice. Then he just shaves his head and becomes modern Bezos, you know?
Yeah. Or that at least like that scene that we were talking about where it's like he's so evil, it'll sort of in the American dream, capitalist dream part always gets like justified in those movies by like then they get hot and you're like, yeah, they're evil, but they're hot and rich. And we never see
him get hot. Yeah.
We never leave that basement. And even though I'm sure it's supposed to be like, it also depends on like an audience point of view that doesn't know anything about Amazon and has no connection to the working class. We're like, it's not like this was made in 2023, like as if we have no idea how horrific these conditions are, how disgusting all of this is. Like it depends on us sort of already having an ideal version of Bezos, like almost knowing hot Bezos and the yachts, and like that we sort of have that in our head so that we can watch this scene and be like, yeah, but he gets out of the basement and then he gets a yacht. And like, I was not there. I'm like, what?
It does not lead you there. Yeah. Like you see, like it has some of like the fun facts about Amazon's growth, but yeah, it doesn't get you to that point of like how big he got and how he changed himself. Cause he does completely change his appearance. There must be plastic surgery, personal trainers, whatever he did. Yeah.
I mean, they do it. Their way of doing it is the opening shot, which is the Blue Origin spacecraft launch. So it's setting up for the audience, like, like this man went to space. Let's see where he started. And then the rest of the movie is the flashback. But yeah.
And it's such a bad, it's perfectly bad shot at the beginning that you're like, I don't care.
Yeah, it's like it takes a second to be like, oh, is this really what I'm sitting down for right now? And then you're like, oh no, I'm in. But yeah, they and it's also they don't even really they depict him from I started from the bottom, now I'm here, because he's a vice VP at a hedge fund. You know, he's making a lot of money.
The youngest VP at D.E. Shaw's history. Don't forget
of D.E. Shaw's history. Yeah, I don't know too much about D.E. Shaw. I guess the guy that played his boss is from like Canadian Shark Tank. Like that's a real billionaire. That dude. Yeah, I realized that after. Yeah, he's like there. I guess Kevin O'Leary's also Canadian, but I think he's Canada's Kevin O'Leary. I guess he's like Canada's Mark Cuban. You know, that dude.
That dude's
the Canadian Mark Cuban.
That dude's tan was out of control. That was an incredible bronze job. I actually want to talk about that scene in the park because I loved it so much. There's a scene when Bezos is pitching the idea of Amazon to his boss at the hedge fund, and his boss is like, "This isn't right for the hedge fund." Take a look over here, Jeff. I've got a absolutely perfect metaphor laid out in front of me right here. We got a man eating a hot dog, living his life, and then some business goon on like a 90s cell phone yelling into it, looking miserable. Who's more happy? It's like, oh, the hot dog guy. Why? Because he's living for the moment. He's like, well, who do you think's going to be happier in 20 years? The miserable business guy, because he planned for his future. Which was just like another perfect, like unintentional, like mask off moment where they're just like, as the viewer, you're watching this and you're like, I want a hot dog too. That looks good right now. Like I like the hot dog guy, the fucking business guy. Great. Yeah, the hot dog looks great. The business guy looks miserable. And I think it just like, I don't know, on its face dispels this idea. And this is something I say to family members all the time because I have like a lot of family that are like, my generation that are in like their hustle mode right now, that are like, work as much as you can, like spend as little free time as possible, save.
There's 24 hours in a day.
As much as you can, hustle, buy your house, get your things, get it settled, to get all the things that you need. And I talk to them and I'm like your 20s are almost gone. Like you're in your early 30s now. What if you die tomorrow? What will you like? You'll be so happy that you just worked for so much time. Like living, you have to live for now.
Totally. And I do think there is something to caring about your career in the sense of like, I hate to quote somebody who, is such a IDF apologist, but Jerry Seinfeld, who dated a 17-year-old woman, but Jerry Seinfeld did an interview where he was like, what happened to when it was the most important thing about your job was having a cool job? It all became about money, right? And I think about that where it's like, if you meet somebody like a friend of a friend at a party and you say what your job is, are they going to have follow-up questions? If you are, if you're an analyst for Ernst & Young, no one's going to have any follow-up questions about that, but you probably make a lot of money. But my first job out of college is that I was a salsa salesman. Whenever I mentioned that, people had follow-up questions. That was a cool job, If when you work in, so like, I think it's cool. Like having a cool job is so much more important than having a job that you can feel like, I feel like that's part of my identity. I don't know. If you are going to think of this capitalistic thing where your job is part of your identity, it shouldn't be about the number. It should be about how proud you are to be like, yeah, that's what I do.
No, it's so true. And I mean, so many of these Wall Street movies that make those offices just look like adrenalized and coke and cool. Like this is actually probably the most accurate version of like what that workplace looks like.
Yeah.
So boring and so dull, and like most likely the like that you're not going to get like some crazy like awesome coked out like pep talk from your boss. You're going to get the guy who's like, you want to be the hot dog guy or the other guy?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why they went to the park if it was a secret, but I feel like when he first goes to me, he's like, oh, I was on the president. He was putting me on like the board of science and technology or something, but I'm sure your thing's more important. Yeah, I don't know. I forget what the context of why they went to the park was. He was like, meet me in the park. And it's just another scene for no reason. Like that's an extra location, maybe because it was a secret. But you're so right about the realism of what these workplaces are like. Like I've got friends that work in these kinds of worlds. It's like, they're not running around doing all this crazy stuff. They're making PowerPoints. They're looking up how to do a specific thing in Excel or Google Docs or whatever.
And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with working hard. I'm like Rivka and I work very hard. Sean, I'm sure you work very hard at MPU. Like I'm very fortunate that I also have a job in media where I get to work hard about stuff that I care about. There's nothing like as a socialist. Something that I just have to constantly reiterate to people is that like working hard is good if you want to work hard and if you care about what you are working on. Where working hard or like hustle culture starts to become a problem is when you are like starting to kill yourself for your work, especially if you're starting to, and even worse if you're killing yourself for your work as an employee, being exploited and having like all that extra value you're creating going to someone else. I mean, even if you are just working for yourself, like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Even worse when you're the boss with the fake sleeping bag who wants other people to not go to the bathroom to get your work done.
Exactly. They expect that of others often. I've worked for folks like that who just have that expectation and are thinking about work all the time, and they can't believe that other people don't, I don't work for people like that anymore, but I have. I've been around those people, and it's just like they're expecting this all the time. And it's like, for what, right? You are going to be like, I'm sure, you'll have a happier retirement than somebody who didn't do that. You'll have more wealth accumulated, but it's like, what's wrong with just trying to leave the world a teensy tiny bit better than from you? You know what I mean? Just make one teeny little change that made the world a little bit better. And I believe the creation of Amazon.com made the world worse. You could argue that, oh, sure, they make it easy. Like if you get very charitable, you made it easier for people to get stuff, for all of its problems. Amazon generally, I guess not anymore, but Amazon is pretty good for the customer or for the consumer, right?
Sure.
For all of its problems, like if they get you shit quick, it's a good price, whatever. More so than say like McDonald's or something, which is putting crap in your body. Like if you want a book, you're getting it for cheap, but you're not the one suffering. It's hurting the worker, it's hurting the writer, it's hurting the industry, it's hurting the competition. But you're still getting your book for $12 instead of $30. New books are expensive. I don't know. But yeah, Amazon has not done anything positive for this world.
No. And you know what? I heard someone a little while back like make the assertion that, logistics and distribution in the US were already like ramping up around the time that Amazon was also scaling up and had its competitors, obviously, but that distribution and logistics was heading in a direction that basically that Amazon had cornered the market on eventually, which was like having this nationwide, readily available, very quick distribution system, and that it was going to be somebody. Like if it wasn't going to be Amazon, it would have been somebody else. But Amazon just happened to be there first, happened to scale up fast enough, happened to corner the market, happened to destroy its competition. Survival of the fittest, not a monopoly. So it also dispels the idea that Bezos is this uniquely brilliant wunderkind who saw the Matrix before anybody else. It's like
there was no Matrix seeing in this. There was staring at people.
Yeah.
Seeing one figure
holding a note. One of my favorite shots was when he was trying to come up with the idea. He's just standing on the street with a notepad looking at people walking by. Just like people walking, neighborhood, commerce. How?
I mean, really,
What can we sell?
so smart. And I'm just like, I can't get over, as we're having this conversation, because they could have not put the library in at all, right? That was probably the most subtle piece. They never mention it. They just like have that as the place where these horrible things go down. And as we're talking, it's like, yeah, we didn't need, like, the internet could have been used to have just like, we could still have the library. Like, there could have been lots of things. Obviously, under capitalism, like you're saying, it's inevitable. It had nothing to do with like, this was the smartest guy. It was just like, this was the guy. This was the capitalist Don. Potentially, he was maybe had the good evil spirit enough to like really not give a fuck about destroying all these small companies. But Barnes and Noble would have been that guy too, which they made that point in that piece, in that scene between the two of them of like, I fucked over all these small businesses, so I get to be the big guy. And he's like, no, I'm gonna fuck you over. And we covered, Sean, have you seen You've Got Mail?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so we covered You've Got Mail, and I just like kept thinking about that too, of like, this is the sequel to that. And like,
No, it's so true, yeah, because that was about the big bad Borders,
they should have
Barnes and
gone
Noble
Tom
analog.
Hanks.
Yeah. I can
Oh
even
my
see
God.
an actual sequel to You've Got Mail where, because they end up together in the end of that, obviously, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's-
Where, and her store closes, they're both running whatever Borders, and then the new villain is like some Amazon thing, and it's like they've been married for a while and it's hurting their relationship or something.
Yeah.
And they're, and it's a sequel, You've Got Mail too. They're actually fighting against an Amazon, but that's not even a joke. Like, I feel like that could be an actual movie, and then the good guy is now Borders, the good guy, because I have Borders nostalgia, to be honest. I also like small bookstores.
for sure.
I was always a Borders guy instead of a Barnes & Noble guy. I remember on 9/11, I lived in Westchester, so everyone left school. My mom picked me up from school, and my grandma had like an eye doctor appointment across from a Borders that wasn't canceled. So I just went to Borders with my mom after 9/11 because she was like, I don't know what to do with my 12-year-old son on 9/11. And I just wandered around Borders on 9/11. It was completely empty. So I always remember going to Borders on 9/11 with my mom. But yeah, and that Borders is definitely closed. There's still Barnes & Nobles, a few, but
There's some Barnes and Noble still, and I will only think of Kevin Sorbo now when I go. But I love that the libraries, they're just quietly like, for that argument of like, but, we do need Amazon. We needed something to fill that void. It's like, there's socialism, communism, there's answers there. And like the public library's just there the whole movie like, hey, been here. Never had to pay. You could put me
could have
online.
come. It's free. Yeah. I do think, this is almost getting ahead into what I think of as like a tip. And so I'll only kind of touch on this, but like Amazon, when we say think like filling this hole, it's like, or this need is like Amazon did create this expectation of convenience, right? That a lot of people have now. And I'm sure we're all guilty of it, even as people that try our best to do boycotts and stuff. There was a book I wanted recently and I looked and, it was like $29.99 to get it from the publisher and it would come in like a week, right? Or I could get it right now, like tomorrow from Amazon for $12.99. And I'm like, I'm going to make the sacrifice of paying a little bit more and waiting. Or I could just go to the library, of course. It's like a newer book. So the library would have to wait too. And it's like, but Amazon created this expectation of you deserve everything immediately. You deserve to save money on it. You should buy everything from us because even when you go to an independent store, you're like, oh, I have to go get my credit card and put it in. Amazon already has my credit card. Because they created this expectation that then for example, like Uber Eats, then expanded on where it's like, oh, if I want to order out food, I can just go on my phone and I can search and all the options are there. I don't need to have a pile of menus or anything, but there's going to be all these sacrifices that are made. And then we can't blame people for wanting that convenience, right?
Which scarily ChatGPT is building on so profoundly, because that's now the expedience of thought. And when you're in a system where you're being asked to use your greatest resource, like your own person, like your thinking, your ability to write letters, form words, and you're so often being forced to use your own personal energy for jobs that you just maybe don't want to you're like, I'd rather fucking use this for my creative work than like write this fucking newsletter, write this email. So it's so easy, and now the convenience has been brought there, and then now there's sort of like this, I know, and I think Perfect Union did a really good, I don't remember if there was something on there, but like just people are becoming aware so quickly as a result of the wildfires. There's just been such a discourse of like how extremely bad it is, and actually how our personal use is so directly tied to climate and how much water AI is using and how much energy, and that we can't have this just like invisible guard with it. Just like, now it's like in our body, and it's just crazy how quickly that can be grabbed upon and how dangerous that is.
Like ChatGPT is free, and I didn't know the water thing when I first started, and I would never use, for ethical reasons, I would never say like write my next script for work.
Right.
But also because I enjoy my job, I don't think it would do a good job. But like I was like, write a searing denouncement of my friend PJ in the voice of Werner Herzog, and I did that, and it was fucking funny. It came out really funny.
And that shit now, I mean, that's easier to like, but like there's things where like where I'm like, I can ask it to like give me some legal, I asked it to compare healthcare things that were like really useful shit that I'm like, I can't get any fucking person on the in the healthcare industry to give me anything other than sell me something. They won't give me any fucking advice. So this robot's going to do that, but it comes with such a price tag. And yeah, it's the new kind of frontier for that shit.
Well, then there's the question where it's like, I don't know, I have like a lot of friends that aren't as in the same lefty space as me, where they'll ask me like, is it okay to do this? And I'm always just like, dude, come on. Like my friends will be like, I don't know if my 401k has money in like defense stocks. And I'm always kind of like, you could figure that out. You could like worry about that. But you know what? I'd rather you be having your 401k be a little bit better than whoever else asshole, right? And it's like, the better people are going to be the ones that say, I'm not going to use this for these problems. And there's this tool we're turning down for very good reason, while the worst people in the world are using it. Right?
Yeah.
So I just like, I don't have an answer to that. I truly don't because I also try my best not to use it, but every once in a while it's like, I would never ask it to write something, but I have say, 100-page document, and I want to find every time a concept is mentioned in it. And you can't control F a concept, right? But I can say, mention every time profit is mentioned in this. And then they'll say margins minus costs or whatever, and they'll pull that. And I'll do that, maybe like twice a month. And that feels terrible because it's actually very harmful. But I don't want to say my enemies, but my ops are using it. So I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, the solution is removing the profit motive from all of these businesses and just trying to build more sustainable models that actually are built around the betterment of society. And I think this is such an important thread here. This what you're both talking about, like this economy of convenience that has really just taken complete hold of American culture, especially within the last decade, because as we know, as leftists, because we are reading about this shit constantly, it is unsustainable. There is no way. I mean, it's good now. Yeah, you can get anything you want right now. You can go to the grocery store now and get like all of the fruits and vegetables that are not in season, a bajillion pistachios that took like 9 trillion gallons of water to harvest. Yeah, that's cool. Convenience is cool. Having like mass options at cheap cost is cool. It is unsustainable, and we're on a crash course for like a very, very harsh rug pull out from the feet of the American people. At some point, I don't know when it's going to happen, but like
I think it's kind of happening. I mean, depending on where you are in the country, I think it's happening.
Yeah, it's slow moving, but like truly at some point it'll be like, no, we can't stock grocery stores like this. No, we can't exploit, like the labor has been squeezed so much that we can't get these things to you any faster or any cheaper, or like costs go up because of all of the knockdown effects of like climate change or other economic turmoil or whatnot.
I will say, to this conversation and what you're talking about, Sean, I think I found because I've had that anxiety too about you're like, what do I do? What do I not do? Those conversations with friends. And I felt like in engaging with the BDS movement, like I learned a lot from hearing some of those organizers and leaders of just like, right, it comes down to like, it's not an individual thing. there's nothing me alone can do. It's about if there's an organized, other people have to be doing it for it to be effective. So like there has to be a boycott against Starbucks and political like ideology and conversation around so it's effective. Otherwise you're just a voice alone, and really like what you gain is being on your high horse. Or I don't want to say just that, or I think for some people it does, like it becomes like about their personal life and their values and how it makes them feel, which is totally valid and equal. Like I think that's my feeling around the ChatGPT stuff, was like, what is it stealing from me? Just being the wake up call to the awareness of like, what does that mean for me in my life, in my spiritual life, in my material life, all of that. But just that when we do boycotts and when there's those decisions of like, we're going to divest from this 401k, for example, it's happening as a group, and that we can find solace and that works, and that individually it just ultimately doesn't, it's not going to work.
Exactly. And then there's also just having a little bit of grace for yourself too, I think, with these things. Like, I believe McDonald's was on the most recent BDS list, and I feel like there's many reasons to boycott McDonald's. But if you're a good like activist who's doing the work here, and you're in the middle of nowhere, like traveling to like an Elbit facility to protest, and the only thing open in that town for dinner that night is to go get McDonald's, you can get McDonald's.
You don't have to starve.
Like that's okay.
All right. Was there anything else either of you wanted to hit before we go to the awards?
I'm gonna have to. I will rewatch this movie. I will just say, there is something that I don't even know if we can articulate, because there is that factor. Like we've watched movies on this podcast that are arguably very good, and I talk about attention economy, and like I just find myself being like, shit, pay attention. I don't know why the fuck this was like riveting. I could not turn away.
I know, it's absolutely fascinating. My last thought is like, I think it really deserves to be this kind of like bad movie you watch with a group of people. I recommend as a partner film, a film called My Son Hunter, which is a right-wing production company that tried to do like an Adam McKay Big Short style movie as a story about Hunter Biden.
Holy shit.
Starring Gina Carano as a Secret Service agent, and she'll like turn to the camera and say little facts. It's super fun. Highly recommend it. They're good partners, I think, but it's not really about economics. It's more about, and it just makes being Hunter Biden look fucking awesome. He just has a blast.
This is the part of the episode where we like to give awards for this movie. We have 3 of them. Our first award is Best Politics, goes to the character with the best politics in the movie.
Ooh, good question. Honestly, am I granting this here?
We all can pitch. You can, whatever.
I thought Mackenzie came off pretty good in this.
I thought so too.
Like she was really just like being like, contributed a lot, first of all. And she's like, you want me to quit my job and everything like that. I think Mackenzie had the best politics there.
And she does point out after the Monopoly survival of the fittest, the investment pitch meeting, she's the one that's like, what about the small businesses that you're saying we're going to absolutely decimate? So she's
like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah. I think that's right. I also want to throw in one candidate because we haven't talked about him at all, which is Jeff Bezos' grandfather, because there are 2.
We meet both, right?
Is it the one? Is it the one grandfather?
Oh, no, sorry. You're right. We meet one, and then we meet his father.
And then we meet his father.
Yeah, that was confusing, but yeah.
2 inexplicable flashbacks with Grandpa Bezos, where little Jeff gets like these beautiful little life lessons. And the 2 lessons are, you got to surround yourself with good people, and it's important to give back. We have to be human. You got to take care of everybody else. And then we just watch Jeff do the opposite of that. I mean, I guess he does surround himself with good people. He interprets, and it's funny because the grandpa's talking about his wife, Jeff's grandmother, and he's like, surround yourself with good people. Like, fall in love with your best friend, build a beautiful life, have wonderful relationships, like good people. And Jeff is like, he's talking about employees. Yes, find good employees. That is what I must do.
Yeah.
Not as much of like a coherent politics, really just sort of like be a nice person, take care of other people. But I just wanted to mention that since we hadn't touched on it yet. And I thought it was so ridiculous.
No, yeah, I think that is a coherent politics, is be a nice person and be good to people.
Yeah, that's true. It's pretty golden rule. Yeah, okay, we could split it between Mackenzie and Grandpa Bezos.
And we have to assume, I mean, it's not like Mackenzie stops anything from going down. certainly benefits tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, yeah, that's true. The real life Mackenzie hangs around until what? When did they get split up? Like the mid 2010s?
She gets hot and she gets rich.
Yeah, I think she's keeping her head down, just using her money. I feel like she does have a tinge of guilt, but I don't know.
She gives a lot of it away. I mean, the
ton of it
charity
away.
model, but she gives a ton of it away. That's like her deal now. So maybe that was like the origin.
And I think she's like married to like a school teacher or something. Like,
Good for her. Get your life,
Let's
Mackenzie
split it.
Scott.
We'll split the votes between Grandpa Bezos and a Mackenzie.
was the grandpa the Cuban one, or is that the stepdad
That's
who takes
the dad. I think that's his real dad.
As his
real dad, I got it.
stepdad.
It's his stepdad. Okay.
Yeah, Mike Bezos is Jeff's stepdad, but it effectively raised him, so he considers him to be like his father.
Yeah, I think his real dad left pretty early.
Okay.
And then I believe he did come crawling back like, hey man, I want money now. Don't quote me on that. I feel like that's a thing. But his dad left when he was really young. And I think in like a bad way. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense because it was interesting, the Cuban connection.
Yeah, they don't explore that at all.
Well, there was a moment, there was one line. I was like hesitant. I was like, are we gonna talk like it's is this gonna be the anti-communism angle, anti-Cuba, all of that? And they didn't fully go there.
Yeah, it was kind of hinted at.
There was like hints of it in like the ideology that sort of cooked him a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think they say like, his stepdad fled Cuba after the Castro regime came to power. So
Right, and then his stepdad says some like the American dream, like a lot of the American dream stuff comes from him, and I think it's suggested that background is like what affirms it.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
But I was like, I didn't know that Bezos was Latino.
Yeah.
So that clarifies it. Stepdad.
Yeah, he's step Latino, I think. Is all. Yeah.
Yeah.
fun fact, the actor who played Jeff's stepfather, Emilio Estefan, is the husband of Gloria Estefan.
Yep. He was, and I thought he was lovely.
I thought he was so sweet.
So Gloria Estefan has seen this movie, probably.
Yes, Gloria Estefan has 100% seen this movie.
There's probably a ring of celebrities that have, like, you have to imagine that Sorbo, probably like a nice right-wing group of celebs have seen this film, and we're bringing it to the left. So, okay, our next award goes to the character with the worst politics. I mean, I don't think it gets. I think it gets worse than. Does it?
Is it Jeff or is it Leonard Reggio?
Yeah, I might lean towards Leonard Reggio. Yeah. Because he was almost like you can't just, I think one of you guys quoted this, you can't just, I did all the work of destroying all the small businesses first, and now you're coming in and taking it, like.
Yeah, I am Barnes & Noble Inc. Really, really loves his monopoly that he's cornered in the brick and mortar book space. I just also love the way he talked to him. He's like, no. Do you know who you're fucking talking to? No. Do you know who you're fucking talking to? Just like a real prick.
Really great. Yeah. I mean, maybe I think they're both the same. I think they're one and the same. And I will say again, is this one of my favorite movies now? I think the way they show the vessel of like just these lame, nothing, like no specialness, not brilliant people to just be the vessel for capital and capitalism is like, this is what it was. This is what capital preys on and is meant to thrive through. And so they are so equally, I would say Bezos, because Bezos is like in the Marxist sense, the cyclopean version of Reggio. Like he really takes it and he's like, like, but he's meant to. And there will be, there's going to be, we know from this, like Bezos will be Reggio, and there's going to be terrifyingly, unless we fucking stop it, because this is how it works. It gets bigger and bigger until like the infinity of it all is like how capital is meant to exist.
Totally.
There's something more insidious about Bezos' politics in this movie because he thinks he's the good guy, and he like rephrases what he's doing several times. Like he says to Reggio, like, I'm not a conqueror, I'm an explorer. It's like, shut the fuck up. And then it's not monopoly, it's survival of the fittest. At least Reggio is like, I'm a piece of shit and I'm gonna fuck you. Like there's something honest about that kind of disgusting politics.
And survival of the fittest is kind of just like, what, to who does survival of the fittest sound good, right? You're destroying people. Like it implies destroying. It's not nature. It's not like,
I might actually vote for Bezos in this circumstance.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I'm a little stuck on who's more cruel there.
You can give them a tie. I feel like they would hate that more. They want a winner and they're going to despise sharing that prize.
And they're going to have to share.
Yeah, I wonder if Riggio, I haven't checked if he's still working with Barnes & Noble or if he's retired.
I'd love to hang out with that guy.
I want to find out if these meetings actually took place, because
I'm very curious about that too, because I do think they did their research to a degree, right? Like I think Armando, as if I'm his buddy, I think he probably did watch a bunch of Bezos interviews and does an impression, right? But whereas Jesse Eisenberg, he's not doing a great Mark Zuckerberg impression in that film, and that's why it's a more compelling performance. It would be a total comedy if he was this awkward Zuckerberg guy, and Armando like kind of talks like Bezos, who is kind of flat, and that's why it comes out flat. I think like a lot of the flaws in the performance are just him doing a good impression, but I don't know.
All right, and our last award is Better Supporting Character. This goes to the supporting character that this movie should actually be about.
I don't know. I feel like Leonard Riggio is the obvious answer, but I want to. That's a good question. 90s hedge fund guy, maybe. I was into that too.
That's a good one. I would also watch like the story from Shell's perspective, because I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot going in. I would love to see like the actual like hard reported biopic about like Amazon's first employee, the guy who built Amazon, who then like left shortly thereafter. And I don't know, the way that Bezos just destroyed his career, his belief. I mean, obviously he probably is worth billions or something like that, even still.
Played by that actor, though, there was something, that actor had something, I couldn't even figure out. I was like, what is this accent? What is going on here? And then that first scene that they had together, too, where he's like, you're not interviewing me. Like, I'm the smart one here. Like, you have an idea. I want to see this writer write the story you're saying.
Yeah, I think I would totally watch that. That same writer too. I feel like the writer deserves another shot and actually getting paid this time.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing investigative journalism here, but if we were, there's a story here.
Yeah, I think definitely there is.
Something's brewing, and if anyone happens to listen to this and know more, I'm not promising we're not gonna do that, but I would like to know. I mean, we'll share obviously with our listeners because as a follow-up, but I would like to know more about the production of this.
Yeah, there's a thread there to pull.
Yeah, I'm super curious.
Any true crime junkies? I
mean, I can pull up this Letterboxd review real quick and see where it's one of the few reviews on there where they say like how it was like the most toxic thing, and it's like one of the only reviews on Bezos, the beginning of Letterboxd. It's about how this is a half-star review of Bezos by Zoe. I was assistant art director on this movie and also acted as a PA. There were plenty of good people that worked on this film, but also plenty of people I describe as not good. In fact, some of the worst work experiences of my life. I just wish it didn't come out so boring, LOL. In memory of Lissy, who played the barista that they cut out of the film, they would have been mad and it would have been funny. So some barista that had a bunch of scenes passed away, I guess.
Oh, wow.
But it was, this woman, Zoe, was assistant art director and PA, says it was the worst experience of her life.
Damn. Wow. I mean, I'm laughing. I'm sorry, Zoe. I'm not laughing at you or your experience.
In solidarity.
That fucking sucks. And like any workplace should be like a fair and equitable workplace. I'm only laughing at the irony that the production of this movie seems like it was just as terrible and exploitative as Amazon, the business itself, is. That's it.
Maybe producer Armando Gutierrez was just being method. Just doing a method thing.
Yeah.
As he was also playing Bezos.
He's getting
and I have a feeling
the
there's a high likelihood that Armando listens to this. And feel free to write in.
He would have come on if we had asked him.
Yeah, Armando, come on. Set the record straight. We will have you anytime.
We can debate Bezos with you. Let's go.
Sean, this was an absolute joy. Thank you so much for recommending this batshit movie. I really think if you've already listened to this whole episode and you haven't watched the movie, you should still watch it because it's even more bonkers than I think we probably described.
It might be up there in my top 5 of movies we've watched for this podcast.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. All right, but before we wrap, the last thing we like to do is ask our guests, is there one thing that you do in your everyday life where you get the chance to practice your anti-capitalist, leftist, progressive values, whether that's like a daily practice you engage in or an organization you work with. Obviously, you work for a wonderful media organization. You can talk about that, or you can talk about something else if you'd like.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, I would say I think there's a lot of value to doing your best to avoiding that convenience in your personal life, but with also having grace with yourself, right? We already kind of talked about this, but I don't know, if you need some kind of small, strange thing, like a very specific cord or something, right? It's so easy to just go to Amazon first, but I don't know. I live in Ridgewood, Queens. There's a 5-minute walk from me, there's a line of those like little discount stores, right? And they'll actually always have that kind of shit. And you just have to realize there's this kind of limitation in your head. It's like, oh, I'll never be able to find this one that like mini USB cord, not micro mini USB, but like mini USB, like the kind of like a microphone or something. And you're like, I need to go to Amazon. But then it's like, no, just take a walk, go support your local business. And that seems so basic, but it's like, remember, like, try to break yourself out of this convenience mindset, but then also don't kill yourself. Like, again, living in Brooklyn or Queens, if you want to say you're in Manhattan, you're somewhere weird in, like lower Brooklyn and you want to get to your home in Queens, there's no good public transit options there. And you're not going to be able to get a yellow cab. It's 1 a.m. You can use Uber. It's not the end of the world.
Sure.
No one's going to hate you. Tip well. Don't be a dick. That's okay. So have grace for yourself, but then also remember about this convenience trap. Also remember that like we weren't built to have everything handed to us like this. Some things take effort. Some things aren't going to be easy, and that's okay. Like, you have to accept that, and they want you to think everything's convenient, and they want to push working class people against each other. They want you, Uber wants you to have a problem with the driver. Uber doesn't want you to have a problem with Uber, right? And remembering that, and yeah, that's what I think is something that could be taken out of this film.
That's awesome.
That's a really good one. That's, thank you for sharing that with us. And Sean, where can our audience find you and your work?
Yeah, check out More Perfect Union. I think just, people always say social handles. Just search More Perfect Union on Twitter, as I call it, Instagram. We're on Blue Sky as well, and search my name as well, Sean Morrow, SeinMorrow. Working on a piece about the carried interest loophole that might be interesting, and got a few other pieces on YouTube about Medicare Advantage that I think are pretty good. Have a little fun watching those pieces.
I have sent your Medicare Advantage videos to my older relatives, so thank you.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for the work you do. It's really, really great.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Thank you guys. Yeah, this has been a blast. I've had a lot of fun, and I'm going to keep listening.
And we'll have you back on to do I was going to say real movie. This is a real movie, but
This is a real movie.
another movie.
A classic film.
Yeah.
Classic. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
To get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to support the show and get access to our Patreon episodes, the link is in the description in your podcast player at mvcpod.com.
Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space, so if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you want to run an ad with us, email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
For next week, we are going to be watching the 2024 body horror thriller, The Substance.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.